the split. Perhaps other people would have felt snubbed and maybe angry. Getting dismissed in this way, via a distant imperial decree, like a useless tool discarded after the job was finished, I just felt relieved and free again. A War Master rank was a burden I was happy to get rid of. As my companions' eyes turned towards me, I saw the same thing in their eyes. Nobody dared to argue to my War Master nomination, as that was literally the Emperor's will. Same thing with the ranks forfeiture. Emperor wills it, thus it is a fact, and an immutable truth in this universe. The Adeptus Custodes among my retinue even reverted to their superior demeanor, no longer willing to obey my orders. They would leave at the first opportunity. As for the Primarchs detached to my command, they were slightly more apprehensive now, their posture straight and dignified. You all heard the Emperor Sanctus will. My War Master rank is revoked, no longer necessary, as the last Chaos God died at my hands. I began in a mild voice, while my fingers tapped the armrest of my command throne. The 6 Primarchs frowned in unison, getting the secondary meaning of my words instantly. They weren't called Primarchs for nothing. Corix took a step forward and gently bowed his head for a millimeter. Care to expand on those words, Lord Lancefire? He asked in a slightly worried voice. I nodded and tapped the golden Aquila on my chest. The Crusade fleet is now heading towards Nocturne, where the Emperor Nihilus has moved his imperial palace, and also where Mars has displaced to. Can't really claim to be the Omnicia without control over the Martian priesthood, right? Primarch Vulcan coughed in his giant fist, perhaps surprised at the news. We have 2 emperors? And 2 Primax called Vulcan as well. The other one is back in the fringe, doing whatever research he does. I answered with a calm smile. I saw the traitor Primarchs exchange glances, no doubt with hidden knowledge of prophecies about a Dark King replacing the Emperor of Man. Since Nihilus meant dark in High Gothic, the parallel would be easy to draw. What will you do with us, Lord Lancefire? Primac Khan asked directly to the point. The man was cutting through words and plots like a sword. Me? Nothing. My War Master rank is done with, so I couldn't care less about any of you. I said with a careless shrug, which made a certain tan wolf at my side burst into laughter. On a dedicated mind channel, I leaned over and tugged his necrodermis ear, making the annoying screech stop. Nails on a blackboard sound relaxing compared to a tan laughing. This complicates my job somewhat. Inquisitor Valine muttered as she sat down gently on my throne armrest, looking pretty battered and sad with her exploded eyes covered by a white cloth. Or maybe saintly and dignified. I wasn't an expert on Imperial lore, after all. I can rebuild her eyes. I have the technology. Zath proposed with a glance at the Inquisitor. So do I, my tan friend. If I can create planets and stars with my breath of the gods, a pair of eyes should be easier. I threw back in a casual tone. On the other hand, Sister Stern was a demigoddess with expert biokinetic powers as well. I simply willed the Tesseract to fold and moved Stern and Valine into my bedroom. My fucking duty has not ended after all. A Custodes shield captain stepped forward next and measured me with glowing golden eyes. You will deliver my men to the Emperor, Lord Lancefire. And if you want any Primarchs, you may pick 2, but not this Vulcan. He is required on Nocturne, he declared with a resolute voice. The Emperor's will, no doubt. I sighed inward at the obnoxious Custodes. Still, I had a choice now. Perturabo and Corix. You 2 will join me in the fringe. Corix seemed relieved at my words and nodded, while Perturabo froze for a second. Why me? The Iron Warrior's Primarch asked with a doubtful voice. What should I say? Because I said so? I already said it. I would have preferred another Vulcan or Ferris Manus to be fair, but you're also decent enough with machinery. I have some ancient bits of tech back home that require an expert hand. I answered instead. See, diplomacy. I could learn. Both tan wolves grinned at me, already aware of the ancient AIs calling my fringe their home. And since I had left most of my ships, troops and Astartes back for the library incursion, my Lancefire land should be rather safe and secure, for what passed as such in this war-town galaxy. Corix moved first, skipping through a shadow to emerge at the right side of my command throne, if on the opposite side of the dangerous tan wolves. Perturabo sighed and tried to join his brother on the same side. only to get displaced and sent to my left side, between me and Zath. The Tan would have an easier time keeping the traitor Primarch in check. Get some rest, everyone, except the anti-incursion teams. We're still in the warp and thus in mild danger, so sleep with your armor on. I spoke last, to dismiss the gathered troops. Mild danger. Ha. I hear Minilo mutter as he walked out of the hall, his librarian hood drawn low over his face. It was the truth, though. The warp was never safe, not even for blanks like us. Thus, mild danger. Primarch Khan waited for the others to leave, then approached my throne with a straight back. "You're not pleased with me, Pef Lancefire?" he asked in a curious tone. "Too direct, man. I was trying to be diplomatic here. Whatever gave you such impression, Primarch?" I answered with a gentle voice. "You chose a traitor like Perturabo over me." "I never fell," he declared in proud voice, and glared at his brother. I sighed again. Did he think Perturabo would have a life of freedom in my fringe? It is the reverse, Primarch. You have conducted yourself well after your return to the Imperium and fought the enemies of humanity with zeal and fervor. Perturabo has a lot of redemption to achieve, and far less traction with Imperial factions than yourself. Many loyal Imperials would shoot him on sight. I explained in sad voice. Khan frowned for a minute, then sighed. And Corix also has a lot of redemption to obtain still. I see. I will instead deploy a dozen Astartes chapters of your gene seed to your command, when things settle down. Blank Primaris Marines, of course. I added as a bonus. Khan smiled and turned around. Of course. Blanks to keep me safe from chaos, no doubt. The Primarch said as he walked away. I love smart people. I answered with my own smile. He saw the trap, but couldn't avoid it. No Primarch could reject an Astartes of his own gene seed. Not for a very good reason. Anyways, it was time to jump in my bed now. Not for duty, but for pleasure. Zath and Lash. I want these two brought up to speed and maybe even experts on fighting Necrons by the time we arrive in the Fringe. They are Primarchs too, so they will learn fast. I told the two Tan who grinned back at me. They also loved killing Necrons, for some strange reason. Godfather. The fleet popped out from the Immaterium fairly close to Nocturne, barely a week away on our rather advanced Ares sublight drives. Also, close enough to intercept FTL comms flittering about Imperium Nihilus, which FTL network had greatly expanded since the events of the Days of Blindness, when most of the astropaths and other psychers died when the Zone Mortalis split the galaxy asunder. Not the Noctis Aeterna is remembered for my lore, but something else. Not a barrier of warp energy preventing travel, but an area of dead space, where anyone with a soul would wither and die. Blanks accepted, for some reason. Must be my luck. Blanks were found suddenly rather valuable, as they were the only one able to conduct trade and other missions from one Imperium to another, including messenger and emissary missions. And while the Emperor Nihilus had a stash of Silent Sisters for his own use, the Emperor Sanctus had precious few blanks in his Imperium Sanctus. Plenty of psychers, all rather useless against the Zone Mortalis. I grinned a bit too wide, as my Lancefire clan of blanks was the direct beneficiary of the disaster. I could guess my clan had become rather rich in my absence. Then the pressure of the Omnisia almost drowned me, taking over my mind impulse unit. My long-awaited emissary returns from the hidden library. I hope you saved some books for me. The Emperor spoke into my mind, perhaps amused at my situation. Balls deep inside a lovely concubine. Damn my luck. Yes, of course. I grabbed a few million of those corrupted books before the Grey Knights showed up. I admitted with a sad voice. There goes my loot. Again. Much less than I expected. Then again, the Starchild was pretty much on the doorstep and had over 600 years to prepare. I hear you chose Perturabo and Corix for your next redemption arc? The powerful voice muttered in my head. Corix is almost ready, I think. I also noted a distinct lack of FTL comms mentioning the lion. I answered with a curious tone. The great game never stops, Pef Lancefire. You are now also a minor god, with the Tan cores unlocked. The Emperor replied in a more diplomatic manner. This must be about the Silent King of the Necrons. And maybe the hive mind? I wondered, while taking a shower. As cool as my fucking duty was, there was a certain method to diplomatic protocol. Like not fucking, when also speaking with the Emperor of Mankind. So the lion stayed at the side of the Star Child? Add Fulgrim and Lorger to that mess, and I was rather happy I emerged on the other side of the dead zone. The Necrons, yes. They can traverse the Zone Mortalis without problems, or even hide inside it. The Emperor answered with a sad voice. I was probably much smarter now. I could also see the trap and be powerless to avoid it. Thus, you need a blank army to clean them out, perhaps even my tan friends. I allowed with a shrug as I sat at my hololith screen and allowed the blade to power up and display the new galactic map, updated with the latest data points obtained from the new sphere. There are other means, like the Exindio arsenal used by the Lion, but men of iron have their own problems. The Emperor said in a casual voice. You don't say. Men of iron might be dangerous to the user too. News at 11. The map showed me a galaxy torn by war and a far larger Lancefire domain, maybe 20 times larger than when I left, covering the length of the eastern fringe from north to south. Over 40,000 worlds and 10 times as many outposts and controlled stars. Wait, did he say 600 years? Time does fly when you're having fun. I didn't feel a day older, but to expand so much, Vulcan and his clones must have been quite busy. Or maybe the Speranza took over and expanded like a rogue AI. Men of Stone should be more reliable. I know a few of those too. I added in a lighter voice. The Emperor fell silent for a minute. Most of the Votan Leagues remained inside the Imperium Nihilus, but they haven't been friendly to the Imperium. Oh, he meant other men of Stone, not my own. Fair enough. I should probably go deal with the remaining Votan too. Your Imperium Nihilus has under 300,000 worlds. The smallest Votan League starts around 500,000 stars and go easily 10 times that for a single major league. I know a dozen major leagues and another dozen minor ones, including 3 under my nominal control. I mused in a low voice in my head. I spoke with the Votan Thethes, Pef Lancefire, about old times and newer ones. And I heard about another one called Ironhead, out in the fringe. The Emperor revealed, partly as a threat, I think. I hesitated for a minute, then sighed. Men of stone, men of iron, or men of gold. We are all of the mankind, just like the blanks and the clone skeins. The Omnicia is worshipped by the priests of Mars, many of them more machines than men. But they, too, are also of mankind. Not my best speech, perhaps, but I was rather tired of intolerance. We had plenty of external enemies anyway. I didn't choose wrong then. You will remain my emissary, Pef Lancefire. And Justine is fine now, with patricles and purity on Terra. Your blank brothers lacked the ability to become Astartes, but Isha and Segarak figured a way to transform them into solitaires. The voice spoke in a milder tone. I already saw that, but never considered why human solitaires would be needed. Messengers? I asked on a hunch. Of a sort, yes. The Webway rejects people or races that were not created by the old ones. Plus, solitaires can be returned from death with little effort, unlike most blanks. The Emperor said in a lighter voice. I nodded inward. Of course, the Emperor would not stop his project of an Imperial Webway, and how better to interface with the old Webway than with human solitaires that didn't cause the rejection. You intend to create a passage into Imperium Sanctus, safe from the Zone Mortalis. I deduced with my smarter brain. Smart people are much easier to talk to. Yes, both me and Starchild have been drilling towards the Zone Mortalis for centuries, but recent Necron attacks on the Imperial Webway have halted the progress, he said in a sad voice. I see. I saw it all. Then I glanced to my left, and Zash the Tan Wolf nodded in agreement. We could go kill some Necrons. Consider it a favor for my godson. I haven't really given the Starchild any gift, despite being his godfather. I spoke in a kind voice. What? I kinda engineered the birth of the Starchild as well. Even sent Purity to help. Zath laughed again in my head, and soon the Emperor joined too. I wasn't joking though. Blood Angel. I felt the tug of a tesseract draw me to the planet, and allowed it without opposition, and thus landed in a marble-covered room of the Imperial Palace. The planet was Mars, not Nocturne, but it was the same thing for the Omnicia, maybe even better. Soon I was assaulted by an eager jump hug from my daughter Janice. Even stronger than the hug I got for Vulcan, but I wasn't a mere mortal anymore. Daddy, you made a mess of the galaxy with your latest stunt. Was it really necessary to escalate to such a degree? You broke the galaxy in half? My daughter asked in an irate voice. I pushed her golden wings away and patted her back. Glad to see you too, Janice. And I used the exact amount of force needed to kill a god in the center of their power. Any less, and I would be the dead one instead. Seated on a wooden throne behind an old-style desk, the Emperor coughed lightly. That's enough, Janice. Remember, I fought Nurgle myself and couldn't kill him completely. His shards still plague the galaxy because I wasn't strong enough. Janice glanced between me and the Emperor, then scowled and ran off, vanishing in a warp teleport the second she left my blankness range. She seems well. Strong too. I started with an approving voice, while summoning a small metal chair for myself. You did make a mess, Lancefire. Got lucky too, obtaining the 6 forts needed to end that abomination. I was ready to send Sanguinius with his own fort to help when the Eldar appeared to help. The Emperor spoke with a sad voice, perhaps disappointed a little. I nodded, waiting for the other foot to drop. No victory without sacrifice, right? I countered with the same tone. I can see why you chose Perturabo now. The fallen Primarchs will never regain their former status, but they can be used in a covert manner anyway. Like you did with Corix already, the Emperor mused in a thoughtful voice, already writing stuff on some scrolls on his desk. This isn't why. The Iron Warriors need to be brought to heel, and their Gene Father has the best chance for this task. Better if we use blank Astartes to rebuild them, of course. I offered with a knowing glance at the subdued god behind the desk, hidden under a brown cloak, just a step away from wearing a black cloak for complete edginess. I could see why the prophecy invoked a Dark King. The Lion had the same idea, for his fallen Marines. It doesn't matter anymore, not on this side of the galaxy anyway. We have the Primaris cloning vats here on Mars. They just need some clone skin tweaking, thus Clonemaster Anzian and Vulcan need to stay and help. The Emperor demanded with a cold voice. He could have waited for me to offer the same, though. Lack of tact was a bad trait for a god. I just sighed, seeing no point to argue. Instead, I unloaded a small hill of chaos books behind me, the tithe I had to pay to the Emperor. Can't really report this tithe to the administratum, right? Their scribes might not approve of chaos books. I said in a light voice. The Emperor frowned and tapped a finger on his desk, covering the books with his anathemic light, then folding them all inside his tesseract. Send your blank librarians to Mars for training. This is why you stole these books anyway. I'll make sure they aren't corrupted. Is that better? He asked in a tired voice, while a glowing scroll flew from his desk and landed in my hands. I only glanced over it to make sure it contained my orders for the Mortalis Crusade, with requisition rights and all. Oh well, I'm sure such a document will be useful one day. Maybe even today, if the Martian priesthood were willing to donate some equipment and munitions from their vaults. I stored the Crusade Edict in my null box and ejected the Fulgurite lance, taking care not to touch it again. Dying by accident was much different than dying on purpose. After all, the weapon flew into the Emperor's hand, who examined it for a long minute. So this is how they suppressed Vulcan. And then you turned it into a god-slaying lance, and had Vulcan stabbed Cinch with it. Necron Tech 2. I shrugged in acceptance. He wasn't called the Omnisia for collecting plastic toys. At least I didn't see any shelves filled with toys anywhere near. I liked my old lance more. It shot fire too. I said with a casual voice. See, I haven't forgotten you stole my lance. Raising an eyebrow, the Emperor retrieved the Drachnian from his tesseract, now in the shape of great sword with a golden guard. You really want to wield the end of empires, Pef Lancefire? The demon is very strong. He asked me with a dubious voice. For a moment, I doubted my own sanity, then remembered that Grey Knight holding a black demon sword at all times, and his strong willpower. I wanted that too. We don't become strong by hiding from danger, Emperor. And anyway, I killed stronger things. I want it for the Lancefire. With an amused snort, the Emperor threw the weapon at me, but unlike the Emperor's sword, the demon weapon impaled me with its wicked blade. I drew it out, and it reformed into a black lance with red runes glowing on its sides. Drach Lancefire, you better be worthy of this name. I spoke in a grave voice, while bestowing my family name on the weapon. You're still an idiot, Lancefire. Now go and kill some Necrons. I already collected your librarians. The Emperor dismissed me with a careless voice, so I stood up, saluted with a fist banging on my breastplate, and went on to find the Fabricator General. As I turned around, the Emperor's sword flew out from the wound left by Dratch and healed it perfectly, including my armor, except a single drop of blood. It had to mean something about blood angels and our drop of blood sigil, but the Emperor wasn't the type to explain much. I still collected the blood for my next resurrection. Should I die again? Maybe that was it? An extra life? This wasn't that kind of game, was it? One slip. Meeting the Fabricator General of Mars was a bit easier today, perhaps for my valuable STC donations and a casual nod from the Omnicia himself. Lord Lancefire, I hope are pleased with the Forge's support for your Nobilitas Primus rank. Now you stand among the elite of the Imperium, the Fabricator proclaimed in a grand voice. Mars did support my nomination for a Tier 1 noble rank, with its privileges and additional problems. I scanned the machine man with my other senses and found his chassis filled with ancient technological marvels, half of which I had no idea what they did. The other half, I did know what they could do, and it kinda made me worried. I would survive those things now, but a meager demon Primarch would not. The Fabricator was a portable titan in a far smaller chassis. Yes, I have become a noble on Holy Terra, which planet is now on the other side of the Zone Mortalis. The Omnicia wants me to clear up the way and secure a route for his Imperial Webway junction into the Imperium Sanctus. Your forge can be of some help, I answered in a serious voice, and poked the nearest hololith projector to transfer the equipment requisition models and quantities. A kind of whirring noise emerged from the Archmagos, possibly a sad laughter if I knew my tech priest lore. I see. A billion remote control drones, armed with a low-caliber autocannon and networked into your flagship's machine spirit. 40 million armed sentinels, each arm holding a twin-ion beam projector. And another million Nova shells, encased in blackstone and primed for remote detonation via a single mind impulse unit. Yours, I would hazard a guess? The Fabricator asked rhetorically, and perhaps sarcastically. Hard to say with tech priests anyway, but this one was already 99% metal, so his tone of voice was suspect. Not only that, but the Mortalis Crusade is scheduled to depart in 3 weeks, or as soon the reactors are refueled. It is a tight fit, but I expect we will manage to accomplish the Omnicia as well regardless. Now, we only need to create a procedure for this operation. Give me work hour numbers, metal mass, and temporal estimations as expected for 10% of your entire forge dedicated to this divine task. I demanded in a more relaxed voice. The blade was already computing a parallel calculation for this task, and surprisingly finished at the same time as the Fabricator. Their numbers also matched to 99%, so I was pretty sure they were both correct. The blade added a single extra equation, compressing the time needed into 3 weeks. Still within the possible, but with a lot of strain on my new temporal acceleration powers. I sighed inward and decided to endure the coming pain anyway. No victory without sacrifice, after all. I would do my own part. As you see, emissary of the Omnicia, a millennium of hard work, if the resources were even available in such quantities. The Fabricator said with a glance at the holographic timeline. Acceptable. I will provide the temporal compression such that my crusade departs on time. And the metal as well. My rogue trader expedition in the galactic core was rather profitable. Your forge's technicians will carry the workload and gain the expertise of 1,000 years without the organic degradation. Be so kind as to flag on the new sphere the available and qualified personnel and take them off regular work for 3 weeks. Yourself as well. Your Fabricator locum will have to suffice while you are away doing the Omnicia's work. I said with a casual shrug. By the next minute, my tesseract was filled with Mars tech priests and acolytes of 100 specialties, everything from basic munition fabrication to advanced Logis engines for flying drones and newer experts on ion technology, received by Mars some 700 years ago from yours truly. My newest Mars pattern Sentinel was basically a human version of the Tau battlesuit, including ion weapons and shield. Not coincidentally, since ion shields were largely immune to the most common Necron weapons like the Gauss guns, while ion weapons were also quite effective versus machine-based warforms like the Necrons and their other constructs. While the tech priest worked in fast time to construct my crusade equipment, My own crew and tech marines also worked to prepare our existing power armor and dreadnought suits for anti-Necron work, and the same for the Knights and Titans. The Blade AI was happy to receive an arsenal of Delta-shaped drones able to shoot her baby tungsten shells, even if they were still decorated with an eagle head and metal feathers to keep with Imperial culture. Mars Pattern Eagle Drone, a simple but possibly efficient use of materials. Real war was the best test bed for any weapon system, but the Blade was already convinced of the effectiveness of networked swarms of drones. The AI was smart, so I leaned on believing her for now. The Tan Wolves also helped a little, producing more phase blades, etheric detectors, and engram scrambling weaponry, in the form of grenades and missiles. A certain Inquisitor wife hopped about from real space into my Tesseract dimensions to check on the progress, while I just laid in bed and endured the pain of temporal compression by indulging in a millennium of constant procreation with my extended harem of concubines. Hard work, I know, but I don't complain. Stoic type, right? Lastly, my newly acquired Solitaire brothers received extra training and Auramite light armor covered in Blackstone plates, along with tan phase blades and special bionic upgrades usually destined for the Officio Assassinorum. But since their role would be to infiltrate and assassinate Necron lords and overseers, the advanced equipment was not only needed but necessary. By miracle and hard work, most of the Crusade equipment was ready by the time limit, as well as new blank sons and daughters born and trained in speed time to become Astartes and ship crew, plus other support roles like tech marines, librarians, and apothecaries. A millennium of gene seed pumping barely provided me with enough blanks to crew the fleet with enough numbers to replace non-blank personnel, which were not allowed to participate in the Zone Mortalis incursion, because non-blanks would simply die, as tested by numerous brave Imperials over the past 600 years. Before we departed, I met with Corix and Perturabo to give them their next task. Collect the Iron Warriors? Do you think it's possible? Corix asked in mild outrage. I just glanced at Perturabo, who nodded hesitantly. It will be very hard, Lord Lancefire. So I took out Dratch and pointed the tip of the demon lance at the failed pre-march. I'm sure you remember Dratch, since Abaddon used to hold it. You know what it can do. Your duty is very easy, Perturabo. Gather your wayward legion and make them obey, or else I will feed you to Dratch Lancefire. Either way, I win. Both Corix and Perturabo seemed quite perturbed at my new lance, although possibly for different reasons. How can you bear to touch that abomination? Corix growled in disgust. The old demon and I go back a long way, Corix. We killed quite a few great demons in my youth. I answered with a careless shrug. It was mostly true, meaning a few great demons. The demon fears you? Perturabo noted with a surprised voice. I mean, I did kill a few chaos gods already. This thing is decent, but not really on the same level. But maybe if it behaves, I will feed it more. I could use a pet chaos god for myself, I said while petting the red runes with a loving hand. Dratch purred in my hand, likely hoping to eat Perturabo soon. I shall endeavor not to get eaten, Lord Lancefire. Good luck with the Necrons. Perturabo muttered in a wary voice, then turned to leave. The crow premarch stayed for a minute more, while a dark cowl made of shadow crows gathered around him. I will shadow my brother then, he asked in a muted voice. Sure, do that as well. But I would ask that you link up with my obsidian auguries and start tracing the Alpha Legion on this side. I believe Omegon is still alive somewhere. 99% certain, I would say. I ordered in a gentle tone. Corix traced the demon lance with some doubt in his eyes, then nodded. I also have some debts to repay, Warmaster. My Raven Legion's gene seed was ruined by them. He spoke with a vengeful voice, then vanished in his own shadow. I just shook my head and stored the dangerous demon lance back in its blackstone coffin inside my bad tesseract. He called you Warmaster, Captain, the blade noted in my mind. I did hear that. Oh well, I'm sure it was just a slip of the tongue. I answered with faint humor. It was probably not a slip, to be fair. Just another twist in this twisted universe. Progress. The first surprise inside the Zone Mortalis was the lack of warp emanations, which affected even our few blank librarians who couldn't draw on the warp to power up spells at all. The next surprise was the giant graveyard of ships, space stations, and even entire worlds, caught in the middle of their normal routine and just snuffed out, leaving only plant life to continue. but no other life, not even insects, not to mention mammals. This gave me an idea for later, using the Zone Mortalis as a galactic band of agri-worlds and blank-only stations, safe from incursion from mostly anything except damn Necrons. But for now, it wouldn't make much sense to start colonizing and lose my precious blanks to Necron genocides. I could still collect the free ships and stations and loot anything worthwhile from planets in our patrol route, which wasn't a small amount, given the militarization of the Imperium. I was already rich, but the first month of my crusade doubled my net worth easily. Sure, most of the Imperial equipment I found was low-tier stuff like lost guns, autoguns, and autocannons, with the occasional lost cannon or missile system in important places. Then again, I did find a dozen Dead Astartes chapters and took all their stuff for my own sons, including their tanks, power armor, and relics. Waste not, right? Then, as the Crusade fleet approached the Webway's tunneling path, the Necrons arrived as well. And not the regular, brain-dead Necrons I was used to. These were coordinated, smart, and fairly rational robots, which simply hated anything alive and wished to make them live. The first engagement with a squadron of scythe cruisers had me lose one cruiser of my own and 100 corvettes in less than a minute, for a meager kill count of 5 Necron ships. It was basically a disaster, so I held council with a pair of metal wolves as to better prepare for this worthy enemy. The Necrons are formidable warriors, Pef Lancefire. We made them this way to win our war with the old ones, Zath said in a proud voice. And then they broke and enslaved us as well, Captain. A ratio of 1 to 5 is not bad at all, even with those small escorts as ablative shields. Necron capital ships are far too powerful to engage in harassing attacks, and you haven't fought a battleship yet. Lash added with a wolfish grin of too many sharp teeth. I mean, I knew all this, but I kinda hoped the upgrades to my ships would make a difference. They didn't. The technological disparity was too big, and I didn't have proper Golden Age warships anyway. Only scraps of my ancestors' tech, which was good in comparison to the degraded tech of the Imperium, but still weak against functional Necron fleets. So, the plan would be to use our Blackstone forts to bear the brunt of their firepower, and strike the tan shards with Immaterium beams? I mused in a low voice. Zath raised a claw and chewed on it for a minute. It may not work like that either, Pef Lancefire. Yes, to the fort bulwark plan, but this dead soul zone will likely suppress the fort beams below the critical threshold needed to kill a shard. You're going to need boarding actions and strike at the Tesseract vaults. Funnily enough, Space Marines were designed for boarding actions, so I did have a second plan available now, but not a sure way to deal with more tan shards. This sucked, unless you two could counter another shard easily. Not even kill them, except if you hate that guy very badly. Freeing the captured shards would be enough, and even better if they would turn sides and help. I proposed with a smile of my own. I did have teeth as well. The two wolves glanced at each other for a long minute. You would free our race, Lord Lancefire? Lash asked in a hesitant voice, as his eyes turned on me. Technically, you two would free your own brothers from the Necron yoke, not me. At least those you consider worthy. I wouldn't know who to trust among multiple tan shards. I'm certain you guys had plenty of factions and internal conflicts, like any sapient race. I answered after thinking a little. Zath sighed softly and lowered his giant head on his paws. My people are not as nice as you think, Pef Lancefire. Many of them would need to be killed, and others take a lot of convincing. And I mean, brutal assault and battery in your favorite Imperial diplomacy style. Violence is always an answer, true enough. I do have my own method, if yours fails. It won't be pretty, I added with a thoughtful voice, mentally poking the lance demon. Eat. Grow. Dratch answered eagerly in my mind. If this was a game, I would be happy to have a growth weapon and feed it all my enemies. But this was still a great demon, not a toy. Holding it was already a struggle, and one slip could see the demon released or worse. Or much worse, as things like to happen in 40K. I'm going to help, if the shards of the potentate are returned to us. I don't care about other tan much. Lash answered in a more casual voice. Zath let out a pained wail and hid his face beneath his paws. I will try, but I fear the worst anyway. Hopefully, the shards we encounter will be weak from their captivity and easily convinced. Hope again. Huh? We were so fucked. Drawing some black stone from my tesseract, I covered my fists with stone gloves and smashed them together. If I have to, I will join in person as well, with a black stone golem frame. And to think I am always making fun of the poor orcs. That would be fun to see, I admit. Humans are mostly harmless as a race, but you are quite the exception, Pef Lancefire. Lash said with a toothy grin and a glance behind me. I turned to find my Inquisitor wife observing my war council with a deep frown, but only partially material, like a hologram of sorts. Ever since she visited Zaryalash on Sotha, Lady Valyene had gained a few strange abilities and an uncanny connection with her own Nexus Cube. Yes, my dear wife? I asked my partially disembodied wife. Even in this phase form, entering the Zone Mortalis is quite the strain on my soul, holy emissary. I never thought I would envy a blank, she said in a cold voice. Still, it is progress. Another method to traverse the dead zone, right? I asked rhetorically. By using Necron technology. This method borders on heresy and heretech, so it will never be approved as a large-scale program. It is grievous heretech for the mono-dominant conclaves, which leaves only a few radical inquisitors ever able to use it, and those come with their own sets of problems. Valyene spoke in a disgusted voice. I shrugged without care. The Imperial Webway itself is copied from alien tech, not to mention the Golden Throne and numerous sci-tech devices. I'm all for human tech when it is possible, but if the Emperor himself hand-waves the problem away, who are we to argue? I countered with an easy voice. You argue quite well, Pef Lancefire. Not that a heresy pyre would bother you anymore, but do think of your extended family. I fear the Imperial faith has grown beyond the Emperor's intention, and its followers will not even listen if he speaks against it. Tread lightly when in the open. My wife advised me with a dour voice and faded back in her dimensional safe space. I sighed in soul pain, matching my tan wolf for once. Killing gods is difficult enough, but how do you kill a religion? I mused in a sad tone. Lash scratched his head with his hind leg, while Zath just sighed, powerless. Even gods were confused about this problem. Centurion. On my shelf of potential tools to use against Necrons, there stood an unlikely product, called the Centurion Warsuit, as large and powerful as a Terminator tactical dreadnought armor, but lacking the black carapace ports and thus the need for real space marines for their use. For example, other blanks unable to become Astartes, including blanks of another bloodline, Sisters of Silence, and my own daughters. It helped that I also had a proper STC constructor on board the Black Lament, dedicated to power armor and similar designs. And since the Blade AI was willing to try new things, the Daughters of Lancefire Sister Order was created for the Sisters of Battle joining my crusade. Going through a temporal compression of 1 week gave me sufficient numbers to implement the first 40,000-strong Centurion Legion, equipped with ion shield and weapons, and small arc reactors normally used by proper dreadnoughts. Then it came the bionic mind implants and the training, thus another week of testing doctrines and procedure, resulting in a ranged army able to support my Astartes and armored units, with tiny blank machine spirits grown from the user's own eggs, for better compatibility. Once the Daughter Legion was deemed ready for combat, the fleet launched the next attempt at ousting the Necrons from the route of the Imperial Webway. Engaging Necron scarabs now. Athena spoke as her Centurion Legion boarded the first Necron cruiser in range. I added more Eagle drones to keep numbers fair, since the Necron construct insects were rather numerous. The Blade had a field day now, using the remote control drones with amazing coordination to shoot off the small mechanical critters that dropped from ceilings or chewed through hallways' walls to reach my troops. As expected, the firepower of the Centurions was more than enough to clear the hallways easily, but ambush was still a problem for the not-so-mobile Centurion suits. We need some shoulder-mounted weapons to sweep the sides, maybe a pair of hotshot lost pistols? I mused inward as I took notes of actual combat progress. The Blade's hologram nodded next to my command throne and started working on my request the same second. More time passed, and Necron warriors and larger constructs awoke from the stasis cells to engage the boarders, posing a different problem now. A Canoptech Wraith can phase shift and also use a transdimensional beamer, making even Blackstone plate armor and most shields useless. A void shield would repel the things off, but ion shields were not enough. Go, Zath. You deal with the sneaky phasing wraiths, I demanded as a stopgap measure. The other tan wolf at my side frowned. We could try something with the etheric detectors, jamming the phase shift for a second and give the Centurions enough time to fire. Not something I can install as a simple software upgrade, though. The devices will need to be reworked. Still good, Lash. Maybe teach me how to apply this upgrade myself, I asked with a greedy tone. Delaying the phasing of wraiths and similar Necron robots would be useful in many more battles. As my left hand rested on Lash's wolf head, a surge of knowledge and information rushed into me, or more likely my mind. It wasn't something I could put into words or numbers, unlike the STC templates or other human tech. Much like the sounding board of the Pharos, this whole thing worked by empathic amplitude oscillations, not electricity. And yet, I did have the implant perk of my CYOA, and that meshed with anything by design. At a guess, I could even interface with Eldar Soul Stones or Orc Crappy Bionics, not that I ever wanted to. I might need to, at least for my children. A blank soul stone to store the mind of my dead children. Iniad would approve, certainly. In a few hours, or a single second of real time, I began to modify my own etheric detector with the new data, and just in time to catch my sneaky Inquisitor wife phase shift around the Techmarine's control station. Lady Valian, be so kind and leave the spying stuff for when we're not in battle, I asked my wife in a stern tone, at which she glared at me, then her son Minilo, and vanished. A second too late. The blade's hologram pointed a finger at my forearm, and I just nodded. Smart beings didn't need much data to infer the rest. An AI was much smarter than a human, though. You were supposed to be distracted by battle and not even see my mother download the battle progress from that console. Minilo explained with a casual shrug. I probably would have been, except my new upgrade to slow down phase shifts around me. I guess poor Valian was bored in her own cube space. It is her holy duty to monitor the Mortalis Crusade, though, and she can't really be here in person. The blade reacted in a kinder tone. I knew that fine. I'll try not be annoying next time. Anyway, back to the boarding action. Zath did a number on the poor wraiths, eating them whole for snacks. I guess the metal's mass has no meaning when you can convert the energy of an entire star into matter and back at will. The tan won't ever get fat, no matter how many things he eats. The Centurions worked great against normal Necron soldiers, but things got worse again when the first Centurion company breached the ship's bridge. A Necron lord with a pair of Deathmark snipers as bodyguards were too deadly for my poor girls. A team of Astral Pirate scouts took over the scene, their 5 Terminator squad launching engram scrambling grenades and then blasting the elite Necrons to bits while they were rebooting. Kinda like flashbangs for robots, but I guess those grenades would also work on lower tech machines like the Mechanicus or other races used. They would work on every robot type, right? I asked Lash while replaying the bridge scene on the main screen, and much slower. Primaris Marines worked too fast for regular people to see what happened. The Deathmark robots even managed to duck for cover in 0.1 seconds of actual engagement time. No wonder they were used to hunting high-value targets like Primarchs or Eldar Farseers and Harlequins. Yes, Captain Lancefire. Even on that adorable little AI you keep under your seat. The tan confirmed with a hungry grin at the blade's hologram. And since her mainframe data core was indeed stored under the command throne of the Singularity, a single grenade of that type would likely cripple my ship too, much too easy. I sighed inward, counting my blessings. Technological disparity was indeed too great. I will struggle on, but I wasn't happy at all. I wanted my Federation tech and all the nice stuff made by old humanity, not this blasted magi tech of the Imperium with their lobotomized brains and servitors used as door locks and elevator buttons. My son Lore walked beside me and placed a gloved hand on my shoulder. The suits are good and firepower is decent, but the users are too slow for close combat. The Centurions must remain as second-line troops, or we lose our sisters too fast, he declared in a convinced voice. As the actual chapter master of the Lamenter's chapters, his words were solid gold. I could overrule him, but I also felt he was right. Still, we could have 1,000 Centurions for each Astartes chapter as support units. Double the firepower without stepping on too many toes. The Codex Astartes does not prevent females from helping, I said with a kinder voice, while storing my new Necron ship as loot. Zath was right too. Boarding actions were much better than dangerous fleet engagements. Didn't lose a single ship today, which made me really happy. And we need something to delay the phasing of those Canoptech robots. I don't want to lose my battle brothers to that trick, Captain Lore added with a lamenting voice. A solution is being formulated. I answered with a knowing tone. Already working on it, in fact. Tree of Life. Back inside the Tesseract space, I held a council with my custodes bodyguard Valerian, as well as Athena from the Centurion Legion and several Forge Master Tech Marines about the upgrades I wanted to make on the Centurion suit. Ion beams are great, but too focused, Father. I want something like a flamethrower on the left arm. Also, we need twin-linked Lost pistols on the shoulders, as they don't have enough punch like this. Necrons are durable as hell, Athena demanded with a displeased voice at the Centurion's hologram. Bolt weapons would have enough punch? Valerian added with a careless voice. True, but with the complication of more ammo problems. No, I answered with a glance at Stefan Goldhand Lancefire. The boy had managed to lose his right hand in an accident and replaced it with an auramite-covered bionic hand, which worked great wonders for him. Indeed, shoulder-mounted systems are difficult to rearm in combat, especially if the engagement lasts long or happens outside the supply chain. Volkite pistols would serve well, just not against metal robots like the Necrons. And mounting a plasma pistol near your head would guarantee the user's head blowing up with the gun when it goes. Like my hand did. The Tech Marine answered with a cheerful hand wave. He still carried 4 plasma pistols in his mechadendrites, but I guess those wouldn't damage him much when they did blow up farther away. All plasma weapons will blow up, sooner or later. Hence, my very little use of them in general. The Auxilia did use plasma weapons, as they were more expendable than my own family. Few Auxilia soldiers ever survive their own plasma weapon. Lost pistols it is then. I'll see if I have a decent twin-link template in my STC archive. Now, flamethrowers are great indeed for area denial, but they use promethium. Same problem like the bolters, but your ammo will also blow up when the fuel tank is pierced. No, I decided after a short cost analysis equation. Again, good for Auxilia, not my dear daughters. Although the Sisters of Battle did use flamethrowers in numbers, they had the protection of the Emperor. One of the Emperors, anyway. Then we use a Melta weapon? Athena asked in a hopeful voice. I sighed inward. Damn backward technology. Meltas had good damage but short range, which was exactly where my girls shouldn't be. Why couldn't the Imperium remember a particle weapon like that Necron particle undercaster? The Federation did have them too. Oh well, maybe ask some Votan when I got back to trading. Perhaps a portable neutron laser like my Imperial Knights and heavy armor used now. But those guns were as large as the entire Centurion suit, and the same for the ion cannons. A combi weapon maybe? Ion beam and meltagun. Better even, an arc rifle, Stefan proposed with a sneaky glance at my STC tablet. I didn't have anything like that. Not yet anyway. The Lax Larica suits do use arc rifles, that's true. But they also have support from the Cult Mechanicus for repairs and maintenance. The Centurions will be paired with the Astartes. Thus, no. I'll try to discover a combi gun in my archive. Anything else? I concluded with a sad voice. The counterphase device? Valerian asked with a raised eyebrow. I nodded and raised my arm to showcase the etheric detector. Already solved. The etheric thingy can be adjusted to jam phasing in a short range. Might also block warp teleports like a Geller field. Possibly the same type of interference. I explained with a shrug. Wow, that was fast. But then again, it is alien tech, right? Stefan asked with a disgusted voice. The Emperor and me agree that any tech in human hands is now human. It's not like the metal counts as being alien, or the math is somehow different on different planets. However, there is another thing to worry about, and that is knowing your device cannot be subverted by some outsider. I am working on that, but for now we will use the devices we have and complain less. I ordered with a warning voice. Custode Valerian just chuckled lightly, while Stefan and his Tech Marines brothers pounded their chests. Compliance. Blah. I expected more from my sons, but their Mechanicus indoctrination showed greatly. Not ideal, sadly. I walked away and joined my wife for a meal and some husbandry in her bed. Much later, she traced a finger on my chest. You should be dead long ago, PF. You died in front of me, not so long ago. And yet, you're young and healthy again. I sighed and tapped her shoulder tattoo. You died too, my love. This is the trin, is it not? I answered in a mild voice. Her eyes glinted with worry for a second. Then she rested on my chest. Alaric had a plan, to save the Emperor by going to the source at the center of the warp. We both died instead. I figured it was something like that. Trying to enter the deep warp? Huh? Not even the four idiots dared that. Dark gods or not, they would be tasty morsels for the entities that inhabit the deep. There was someone there, calling themselves the Second Son. Looked like a man, but he wasn't. Made of plants inside. He saved us, for old time's sakes, and warned us about the 11th son. Valine whispered as tears flowed on my chest. The two missing Primarchs? I think I know what became of 11. Goes by Malice now, with his Chaos Marines called the Sons of Malice. Haven't met any of those so far? I said in a careless voice. Isn't it strange? The old Astartes legions went to 20, but 2 of them are not recorded anywhere. Vanished. You think the other Primacs know? She asked in a lamenting voice. Probably not. I guess I could ask a shard of Nurgle when I meet one next. You won't mind if I do horrible things to the thing before I kill it, right? I asked rhetorically. The Inquisitor laughed gently and climbed on top of me again. You have the strangest ways to perk me up, Lancefire. Now let me ride the lance once more. Oh well, this was the good part of marriage. Soon, Joan will grow too big to allow us the pleasures and joy of firing the lance. Malice. 3 blanks and 3 Grey Knights stood at opposite sides of the Golden Throne on Terra when Primarch Guilliman returned from his epic quest to obtain a Blackstone fortress. It wouldn't have been such an epic quest if the events of Days of Blindness didn't coincide with the rupture of the galaxy and the formation of the Zone Mortalis. Patroclus had advance warning, but just like his father had said, the Star Child was being dramatic about his birth, even flooding Terra when the water broke and rain fell for 6 continuous years. The Primarch was escorted by his sister Teresa and a certain Eldar princess, equally hated and loved by those who knew what she did. Emissary of Rain, what brings you to my Terra? The Emperor asked with a curious voice, even opening his eyes to observe the Eldar woman directly. The richly dressed Eldar looked around the room for a moment, then ignored the Grey Knights to focus on the blanks instead. All Lancefires too, not by coincidence. My divine patron send his regards. I see his gift was well used. Lady Justine, how are you? Ivrain asked in a melodic voice, yet hiding a dozen subtle undertones. The Grey Knights tightened their Aegis aura in visible blue blurs, so the words were probably loaded with a psychic component as well. Not that blanks cared at all. Still alive, so that's all good. I would guess my son has also returned from his quest, and makes your Eldar pantheon wary, right? Justine answered with a studied voice, also inflected with a strange tone, likely picked up in Eldar captivity. Patroclus never knew words could carry so many emotions until now. Ivrain shivered for a second, before resuming her cool demeanor. Pef Lancefire is already engaging the Necrons inside the Soul Death Zone, escorted by a pair of Cursed Tan as well. My divine patron is worried a new war in heaven may start next, if problems start on his side. Patroclus blinked at the news, then nodded. Of course, the Dark Emperor would send the newly returned army of blanks to clear a path for the Imperial Webway. Who else could resist the soul death with such ease? Abominable intelligences or blanks, and none other. Well, the Tan counted as both, and as none too. And black souls were still not well seen in the Imperium Sanctus now, not that they were well treated before. At least the Inquisition sent a report now, if and when a blank died for the glory of the Emperor. The blank numbers on this side were close to an extinction event, if the route to the other side remained closed for another 666 years. Well, other blanks that were not of Lancefire bloodline at least. Father being a prime noble now helped a lot, and Purity having the ear of a god helped as well. The Emperor tapped a finger on the armrest of his glowing throne, then shook his head. Pef Lancefire is not a problem, emissary. He has always been the solution, if enticed properly. 3 more craft worlds were raided by the Sons of Malice, Starchild. And we know who leads them, unlike your brainwashed followers. Ivrain spoke with a viperous voice, and even pointed at Primarch Guilliman for some reason. Well, I'm back. Emperor, father, brother. What do I call you? Robot Gilliman asked the Emperor hosted inside the vessel body of Primarch Magnus. Call me sire, Robot. The Imperium is still a monarchy type of government, and I am your liege. Did you choose to enter this side of the zone by your free will? The Emperor asked in a different tone. Kinder, perhaps? Well, that other Emperor kept calling me a traitor. I was paralyzed with chaos poison in my veins for 10,000 years, not taking a vacation. Robot explained in a simple tone. True, but not the whole truth. Anyway, once the transwarp duct is complete, you may return to Ultramar if you wish. Or stay and help me protect humanity on this side. The Emperor said in a compassionate voice. Patroclus had learned to ignore that tone, since it promised violence and bloodshed when obeyed. Sire, what is the deal with these sons of malice? Ivrain thinks I know them, but I don't. Robot asked with an irate voice. You did know, but the information was deleted from your mind. By your own request too, the Emperor said with a glance at Ivrain. Robot frowned for a minute, then sighed. Nothing comes to mind, not even potential individuals, which is unlikely for me. I like to plan things ahead. The Emperor's eyes glowed for a second, and he spoke with reality-shaking words. Remember the number 11. Patroclus realized the same second what happened and deleted the audio track, recording from his implant. Enuncia was a potent form of language that warped reality itself, regardless of causality and other laws of nature. Machines had the tendency to explode when parsing that language in any form. My 11th brother, the Primarch of the 11 Legion. What an idiot! Robot exclaimed as his lost memories returned. Yes, calls himself Malice or the Lost now, and loves number 11 for some strange reason. Also has a minor domain in the warp, malice, and anarchy. Quite the rebel teenager, I would say. The Emperor continued with an easy chuckle. Patroclus exchanged a glance with his sister, who nodded. This would be a Lancefire affair again. It was obviously an Eldar plot, using their blank gift to get rid of another competitor in the Great Game. The Eldar never changed, no matter what they claimed. Robot didn't laugh, though, mulling over things in intense silence. I guess quite a few memories returned with the announcement. Anyway, emissary of Iniad. If you're here to plead for Lord Lancefire's help, you came to the wrong court. The man might be even upset with me for revoking his War Master title. Human politics, nothing wrong about his abilities, to be fair. The Emperor continued in non-enhanced words. Yes, humanity is rolling downwards towards destruction without needing our help. But this malice of yours can become a real threat to all life, just like our excessive teenager was. He will be able to manifest in real space soon, once their blood games are finished. We have 5 craft worlds preparing to face him, but I know it will not be enough. We need your Warhammer. Ivrain demanded in a not-too-polite voice. Patroclus fist bumped his sister for a well-timed prediction. It has been too long since he met father anyway. These last 666 years in the company of religious fanatics were a bit strenuous, even for a tech marine. It's a trap. This would be the midway point of the zone. And they are guarding the place, as expected. Zath pointed at the large Necron fleet holding station near a magma world that used to be a Mechanicus mining facility, formerly housing millions of serfs and servitors from Forge World Ixes. Some of their cogitators still transmitted data, but it was mostly static nonsense. The human noosphere was intrinsically linked with nerves and neurons of human origin, mostly as to avoid the Mechanicus prescription of AI. On the other hand, a single knight suit from House Lost was fine, although the pilot was long dead, probably guarding the mine against raiders and pirates when the soul death happened. Once I retrieved the abandoned walker, I could have my night pilots and tech marines data mine the cogitator and interrogate the machine spirit about the condition on the ground. Thanks for the gift. It was only a Knight Helverin pattern, the smaller kind, called Hate's Requiem, also armed with arm autocannons and a carapace meltagun. Slowly, the history of the place revealed as the Knight's machine spirit decanted its secrets, with the Knight itself eager to jump into the fight right away. I wasn't a red-hot bloody Imperial, though, so we will not. Not until I had all the knowledge of these enemies. The Necrons are constructing a strange installation on this planet called 9-331, a circular bore lined with blackstone pyramids. I told the Tan, who just nodded like a wise wolf. It's a dolmen gate, meant to breach your Imperial webway and pour their troops inside. I say we let them finish and take it from them after. It is quite difficult and expensive to build an interface port, even for a Necron dynasty. Zath said, with a sneaky plan in mind. Their fleet will be lacking troops to prevent our borders if they all jump into the webway. And after we take the fleet, we can strike their army from behind, while they are engaged with the Imperials. Clever, I noted with a wide grin. Even better, the resurrection protocols will not work if the Necron troops are stuck inside the webway, away from their resurrection hubs. Although we should still blow up the resurrection forges just to be safe. Lash added with a giant grin. That was indeed good news. It was likely my luck striking again, catching the enemy with their pants down. Not that these Necron robots even wore pants. So uncivilized. Even the knights and titans of humanity wore sacred tabards hanging from their waist. We had time to prepare and allocate the boarding Astartes per ship size, while my Tan friends provided expected schematics of those ships, as well as critical points to target like energy conduits, reactor power sources, and the important resurrection forges too. So we conducted 100 training exercises on mock-up and captured Necron ships, although without real Necrons to shoot at. While my family trained, I managed to finish the damned combi gun for the Centurions and replace the remaining multi-lasers with tungsten autocannons for the blank auxilia. Even the new Helverin Knight got upgraded and joined the ranks of my Lancefire house, keeping one autocannon and gaining a twin-ion beam on the right arm. Then we waited for the Necrons to step inside the trap, all eager for a good fight. The plan also worked flawlessly, until it didn't. These Necrons were much smarter than the demented genocidal maniacs I was used to, and they also had access to Tan shards and tesseracts. Because of course they did. I got my own ones from the Necrons too. If I was a normal human, things would have gone badly. It's a trap. Lore yelled as the walls fell from the corridor of the tomb ship, the Necron battleship type, and a million soulless robots opened fire from both sides. I drew a deep breath, and the star of 9-331 dimmed for a microsecond. Time flicked back a single minute, returning my troops on board the fleet, while the energy buildup from the star enveloped the Necron fleet and the poor magma planet as well. It wouldn't get more flowing rock and metal on the planet much, but for the Necrons it was a disaster still. The Dolmen Gate was clogged with molten rock, trapping a large portion of the Necron army on the other side of the Dimension Gate. Then our Blackstone forts began to fire their weapon batteries and Nova cannons, 1,000 Nova shells blasting the Necron fleet and eliminating the smaller escorts and light cruisers directly. Sadly, the heavy cruisers and battleships of the Necrons still remained, a bit scorched but otherwise functional and ready to kill us all. Only 100 such big ships though. After 300 of their lighter ships exploded into chunks of Blackstone and Necrodermis. I could deal with this fleet even without cheating now, but I was a bit angry at getting tricked. There are 14 Necron dynasties here. I wonder how they managed to gather without killing each other. Zath observed in a curious tone, just as several Tan shards bound with living stone chains emerged from the larger tomb ships. Oh well, time for Plan B. Our Immaterium beams began to fire on the Tan shards, while Zath and Lash were indexing names and allegiances for later. Maybe we could salvage the disaster somehow, if we could liberate a few friendly shards. But if not, even a dead enemy was a good deal. New sphere markers appeared on my implant, red, yellow, and blue, as to reflect target priority for our soul-killing beams. Then, as our beams focused-fired 3 red-marked targets, Zath and Lash jumped outside to provide compliance incentives to the yellow targets. I sighed inward and jumped outside the ship too, then skipped through my space foldability near a green-colored shard with tentacle flails and drew out Dratch. This was the last red mark, and my own choice to consume. Eat him, I commanded the demon lance, and the thing lit up with red runes and elongated into a flaming lance to impale the deceiver Tan shard. I felt the demon drain the shard, and its own pain from the manifestation inside the Zone Mortalis, but I was willing to let it endure the pain without worry. It was only growth pains, after all. Go free the blue targets already. I heard Lash inside my mind, as the 2 blue-marked shards were resisting the Necron yoke with their last strength. 2 boarding groups from the Space Pirates and the Astral Pirates chapters displaced near the Tesseract vaults holding the Tan prisoner, with a few centurions and armed sentinels from the auxilia to act as cover units. It took a long minute for the deceiver shard to die and get consumed by the lance demon. But in this time, another yellow mark shifted to blue as Zath convinced him to join. Another boarding action to liberate the now friendly shard, the Void Pirates this time, while Zath and Lash each blocked 2 more yellow targets from reaching my fleet. So I moved next to Lash and held out Pef Lancefire like a menacing club. Freedom or get eaten by the Lancefire. Choose fast. The bound 10 glared at me with hate for a second, before letting its shoulders slump and turned blue, while his scythe vanished inside the folds of his necrodermis robes. The Night Reaper was a proud sort of tan, but he could see the writing on the wall too. I sent Lore and Athena to rescue the important shard, while Zatha's target turned blue just as I looked at it. I did carry a long club though, so it wasn't a peaceful conversion. Eat all. Grow! The demon yelled just as I stored it back into its coffin. One by one, the blue-marked tans appeared in battle formation beside my tan wolves, now free and eager for revenge. Go have your revenge then. I allowed them with a nod at the Necron fleet, served cold, but a gentleman could wait 60 million years for their revenge. Sadly, only 4 Tesseract vaults were recovered intact in the engagement, only those housing red-marked, thus undesirable tan marked for death by their own brethren. The rest were blown up to allow the friendlier tan to escape and help in the battle and the following massacre. I walked behind the revengeful shards, while my wife joined me in her phased form to observe stuff for her Ordo Xenos and the Emperor himself. Sometimes we got weird glances from the shards, myself even more than my half-real wife. I guess there wasn't every day a human helped a tan prison break on this scale. Or at all, to be fair.